This is the debate between what is anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, the wage trying to be conflated here in the United States. And it's become a real big issue. And anytime you try to criticize what the state of Israel is doing, they try to say it's anti-Semitic. Let's go full screen. And when Fee comes back, we'll pop us both back in, guys. Convo Couch. All the links are down below. Go ahead and share it, like, you know, the ways to help support independent media. Let's start off by sharing. We love you.
Zionism is a political philosophy which has brought about the state of Israel, the so-called state of Israel. This political philosophy has nothing to do with religion. On the contrary, it seeks to confuse others and let them think that Zionism and Judaism is one and the same. I am a conscious African. I know properly my history. I know that Africa gave Judaism to the world. I know that the first Jews in the world were Africans. Not only do I know this, but I inform everyone who has doubts about it to read a book by Sigmund Freud entitled Moses and Monotheism as a beginning. Consequently, I know that Judaism and Zionism are not the same. Zionism had its first organizational expressions in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland, in Europe. Here was a man by the name of Theodor Herzl, H-E-R-Z-L. He was the founder of Zionism. He said that he was going to find the state that God promised the Jews. Listen to this very carefully. This man, Herzl, was an atheist. He believed that there was no God. He said God did not exist. Now, how is it that the man who believes that God does not exist is going to find a state that God promised to his chosen people? I'm telling you, this man is Satan in disguise. Zionism is a satanic movement. It is devil. It is imperialism. It is racist. It has gone and taken the lands of the Palestinian people and through terrorism has driven them out. And through terrorism, it maintains its power. And the United States of America, with over 6 million homeless, sends to Israel billions and billions and billions of dollars everywhere to bomb Palestinian people while homeless people are here and unemployed are here. Zionism is going to raise this war and make the people in America become clear to what it is and become anti-Zionist and stop the aid to Israel and use the money to take care of the homeless in this country.
There's a theory out there, fam. And there's a theory out there that anti-Semitism equates to anti-Zionism. And I'm in the land of Boca Raton where there's a lot of people out here that would agree that if you're being anti-Zionist, you are actually, in actuality, being anti-Semitic because you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. And, you know what I'm saying? That they, Israel should not be a state. They don't look at it as occupied Palestine. They look at it as they are the Israelites and they have rights to the land in Israel. And that is the big conflation right now, fam. It went through Congress the other day. Only Thomas Massey pushed back against it. Even the squad members, except for Rashida Tlaib, who was a no vote, but the squad members agreed on it. Now, it is a resolution, fam. And as you know, you've explained to our audiences many times before in the past that a resolution is just symbolic. It really is not law. But it does mean something when the whole congressional body is saying that you cannot conflate this anti-Semitism from anti-Zionism. It's one and the same. Go ahead, fam.
I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum, right? Anti-Semitism is something that is being used, sadly, as a cloak to cover what Israel's doing, all of its war crimes that it is committing. And ironically, doing the same thing to Palestinians that was done to many people of Jewish descent. But it is under the guise of this idea of Judaism, which isn't valid because you have many people of Jewish descent opposing what's being done because they know all this does is actually bring more anti-Semitism. And, beside the fact that Palestinians are Semitic people, besides the fact that this is nothing to do with religion, because a lot of people try to make this about Muslims versus Hebrews. And the reality is that's just not the case. This is all about resources extraction. This is about Israel being the military contingent of the United States in the Middle East, as RFK so aptly put it. This is about that. This has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with that. So I think people at this point conflating it are just stuck in that way, Pasta. And as well as I do, that some people won't change their viewpoint on this. But anytime any sort of religion or people try to put themselves as the chosen ones, I think it's problematic because who's to decide who the chosen one is? I mean, this is ridiculous at this point. We should be past all of this. People have the right to worship whoever they want, but to try to put others under, and we know people have been honest about this in Israel. They have said, we want to expand. This is all ours. But the best part is that it's people from freaking Manhattan moving into and occupying these spaces
Brooklyn
in Palestine. Literally,
know, right?
like, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
not poor people either. They're not people that have
No.
been oppressed. They're not people that have been, suffering in some sort of working class neighborhood in freaking Bronx or in some place. Like, these are people that have money, and they're going overseas and taking houses from people who have been living there for literally centuries, and they're saying that they have a right to them because of their ethnic background, which doesn't even
Fam,
coincide
you're not
either.
being fair, fam. There is that one video going. See, he points out very clearly, and I think it was the one that goes viral. I forgot his name. I was trying to pull it up the other day. But if I didn't live here, somebody else would live here, not them. So what difference does it make? It doesn't make a difference. If a giraffe, a monkey, or whatever occupies the house, they're not going to be able to occupy it. So I'm doing it. And the lady's standing over the rail going, but you're stealing my house. And the mentality is, well, if I don't steal it, somebody else of my religion from Park Slope, Brooklyn, New York, from Brighton Beach, New York, and whatnot, which means technically, fam, that you can't even be anti-Semitic against them because they're not from that area. They're from the States, right? So it's like, technically, you can't even be anti-Semitic because Semitic means people from that area. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. And also, you can't even use these tests in Israel. These genetic tests, what are they, like the ancestry tests and all those tests? You're not allowed to use those tests in Israel. Really?
No. But was it you or was it Eva Bartlett who put it up, or was it Vanessa? Well, you know what all the Palestinians should do is just convert to Judaism and say, hey, now we got the right to stay here.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who it was. It wasn't
in
me,
a way,
but
but
it's
it's sad. It's funny and sad in one short breath. Fam, this Piers Morgan thing is a couple weeks old, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it. And I think it's so amazing because when we talk about this conflation of the mainstream media or just pro-Israeli people, who want to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitic, there's a tactic in which they use. And now we have this panel with Piers Morgan where they're even attacking Piers Morgan for being too, pro-Hamas is what they're saying, because that is the tactic. In one frame of mind, we have two guests. One of them uses the tactic for family saying, well, okay, you know what? I'll condemn everybody. I'll condemn Hamas. I'll condemn the Muslim Brotherhood. I'll condemn all these people as well as condemning Israel. Now, will you do the same, saying we'll condemn everything across the board? And then you have the other tactic of Glenn Greenwald. And whether you like Glenn or not, this is the genius of him sometimes when he's able to explain very systematically that, no, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to conflate anybody who wants to have any criticisms of Israel whatsoever as a pro-Hamas, a pro-terrorist. That's what they're trying to do. Therefore, then they can suppress them, censor them, and shut them down, fam. I can't wait for you to hear this because it's just such an intriguing panel. You got anything else to say before we get rolling on this?
No, go ahead. Let's hear it.
You're going to love this. This is good stuff. Here we go. Piers.
Well, welcome back. Reports of anti-Semitism have soared in both the UK and the US and indeed around the world since the Israel-Hamas war began. Many pro-Palestine supporters, however, believe the criticism of Israel is being censored by the claims of hate speech. Last night, Israeli President Isaac Herzog told me that a pro-Palestine march planned on the UK's Armistice Day should be banned. So our claims of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia being used to stifle legitimate criticism and indeed free speech, or rather tensions on our streets, in real danger of boiling over. Well, here to debate all this is the founder of the End Jew Hatred movement, Brooke Goldstein, the host of System Update, Glenn Greenwald, and the author of Go Back to Where You Come From, commentator Wajahat Ali. Welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, Brooke. I want to read you what you tweeted me recently, because I think this will set the tone for this debate. You said, Piers, I've been on the show. I know you to be a fair journalist, but I don't understand why you're giving these Islamo-Nazis such a large platform over and over again to spread their venom. There comes a point when you have heard their message and you've done your duty. Would you likewise host every single member of the SS in Nazi Germany for the sake of debunking? I hate to say you're not doing a good job at it. Their lies and propaganda are so carefully crafted that the more you put Hamas apologies on, the more effective they become. Asking people to debate them, to debate how many babies were killed, whether it's by beheading or by stabbing or by burning babies alive, is tasteless and disgraces the memory of the innocent Jewish people who've been killed. At what point does your journalism become a propaganda tool for terrorism They send their best and brightest to you to engage in mental masturbation, acrobatics, and they're running circles around you. With all due respect, enough. In the battle between good and evil, there is no journalistic obligation to continue to put evil on a platform to be debated. So, I mean, that seems to me a pretty strong way to start this debate, because what you seem to be saying is that so long as I have pro-Israeli voices, that's fine. As long as I have a lot of people like you who just have one view of this, then I'm a fair journalist. But the moment I stray into people who are pro-Palestinian in a very passionate manner, then somehow I'm failing in my journalistic duty. And I would say that that right there is part of the problem, Brooke, because I have tried to turn this show into a genuinely fair platform for all sides, all arguments, all voices. And I think we've been getting the audiences that reflects, which is people like it. They like to hear both sides. Why don't you?
Now, fam, before you started on this and stuff, before we hear Mrs. Brooke Goldstein give her reasons why, and cornered by Brooke Piers Morgan, how far do we have to go? Does the pendulum have to swing for when you're claiming that Piers Morgan is too pro-Palestinian? I mean, that should be in itself, right off the bat, a red flag and make you say, wait a second, come on. Piers Morgan being pro-Palestinian and trying to conflate it with pro-Hamas. I mean, Piers. But your thoughts so far on what you've heard before we get in, because I think you can probably guess on how Brooke Goldstein's going to answer this question right here. Go ahead, fam.
Well, I think the most important thing to note about all of this is that if Piers Morgan is being viewed as pro-Hamas, that if the BBC and CNN have been literally saying Israel doesn't have any evidence that Hamas had weapons under the Al-Shifa complex, that Israel doesn't really have evidence for a lot of the things they're asserting. When you see mainstream media shifting to what we've been saying for months now, and the things this sort of shift happens all the time. It happened with COVID. It happened with the elections. It happened with Russia, Ukraine. So they will shift a few times after the fact, but they will shift when they know that's where the wind is blowing. And what you have to acknowledge out of all of this is that Israel has already lost the public image war. They are losing the propaganda war entirely. There's no way that people are on their side, as much as they try to paint it like, oh, Hamas equals terrorism. One, that's not true. As much as they want to make it that. Two, even if Hamas were terrorists, the level of reaction by Israel in targeting women and children doesn't justify that. Even if they were to find tunnels full of terrorists, it doesn't justify the genocide of 16,000 people. So they can't even use that anymore. And their propaganda has been so bad that it's been mocked, literally, not just by kids on TikTok, but by comedians all over the United States. So this shift is not something because Piers is just some sort of like had a come to Jesus moment where he's all like, yeah, like I see the light now. No, it's because this is bad for them now to not at least acknowledge that what Israel is doing is wrong is actually going to be looked upon back in history as detrimental to humanity. What it is now, it's going to get much worse. It's going to be exposed even further. So they're already sort of seeing where that's going, and they have to say, well, okay, well, you can't do that. You can't say that. Just because I say this doesn't mean I'm pro-Hamas. So they're already telling us in the world that, yeah, this is happening. So I think that's what this really, the most important part of all of this is.
Fam, just so you know, Carl Hines is watching the show. He says, hello, Fifi and Pasta, you're looking good. It's obvious that I'm still losing weight. We want to say hello and send our love out to our good friend, old school fam, Carl B. Hines, hanging on out. We love you, buddy. Fam, I love when you come on and you give your perspective right now on this stuff, because it's not, you know what I'm saying? The conversations that are having on your network are so different than the conversations that are having on American networks right now. And I think you would know that too as well. And you're even critical of some of the work you guys, I'm sure, are doing over there too as well, because you know this situation inside and out, and you've looked at every single angle. It's great in listening And seeing yours and Eva Bartlett's work on Telegram. If you haven't had Eva Bartlett's Telegram yet, ladies and gentlemen, go get it. It is awesome. I'm loving the conversations. But here we're going to dive into this. A lot of it is what you suspected. And it's a lot what's going on in the mainstream media TV today. And I'm just reading some of the stuff in the chat. Somebody would put down right away, but did you condemn Hamas? Let's just get into this more and we'll get more opinions. Here we go.
So, Piers, thank you for bringing up that tweet. First, I want to say that's not what I'm saying at all. There's pro-Palestinian, there's pro-Israel, but you've been having pro-Hamas people on your platform, and you're giving them an opportunity to spew their virulent anti-Semitism and their propaganda that justifies Hamas terrorism. It's one thing to debate issues of geopolitics and national.
Brooke, can you name one?
Right in front of me, I can't. I was replying to something that
just name
you
one.
had someone on that I was
Name
replying.
one guest I've had in a month.
You know, I don't have the names on me right now, but I can name someone who is on right now.
With all due respect,
Brooke,
with all respect, you tweeted this lengthy attack on me and my journalistic rigor.
Okay, so I will talk about
and
it.
I'm simply
Let's
asking
talk
you
about,
if you're going to do
the people you have on right now.
Hang on, Brooke. Hang on. If you're going to do that, I don't think it's unreasonable to say who. Which of my pro-Palestinian guests expressed support for Hamas? Because I must have missed that.
Wajahat Ali, who is on the show right now with us, for example, has deep connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is the mother of all terrorist organizations. It spawned Hamas, a designated terrorist group, which is currently killing both Gazan and Israeli civilians. Wajahat Ali, who's on the platform with me right now, and your audience needs to know this, sat on the board of the Muslim Student Association, which is widely known to be a Muslim Brotherhood entity. He also has writings that are cross-posted on the English language website of the Muslim Brotherhood. He has cross-posted authors who call for the eradication of the Jewish state. He's a leading writer at CAP, the Center for American Progress, which also has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. He has criticized cracking down on the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And of course, he just published an article saying that he's against Hamas because it's politically expedient to him. But he is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. That's who you have on your show right now.
Before I go to him, you've just said he'd just written a piece condemning Hamas. So you kind of kill your own argument. Let me go.
Even Piers setting the record straight right before he's about to go. This guy just wrote an article pushing back against exactly what you're saying. And the fact that they just want to conflate any type of opposition towards what is going on right now in the Gaza Strip and just label that as terrorism. And I'd like to hear Fiorella's point of view on this when it comes to talking about that, because what would you define as a terrorist nowadays? Okay, I mean, the State Department and the American media and the government is going to say, well, the difference between our standing army and Israel's standing army and Britain's standing army is that we don't target civilians. We go after soldiers. But we understand that that's not true. Ever since America's introduced drone warfare, the civilian rate has been crazy. And now a representative of the Israeli government, of the army on CNN the other day said they are killing 2 citizens to 1 Hamas soldier, which if they're admitting to that type of numbers, you probably can guess that it's way off. That's up for you to decide, but that's what they're admitting to, right? They're admitting that they're killing 2 citizens to each Hamas leader and stuff, or Hamas militant. That in itself says that you have a actual documentation for killing civilians, that you don't care. And it's called the Dahaya Doctrine in Israeli policy. Fam, your opinions on this, because this is just so intriguing. And I want to hear your opinions about this as far as so far what this lady, Mrs. Goldstein, said and what the actual Israeli armies do and what our standing armies do. I mean, can we not say that we don't target civilians? We just say they're casualties. So what would you define as a terrorist then in any sense of the word? Go right ahead.
Well, what the United States defines as a terrorist for the rest of the world, you all know what it is. I mean, it's a Muslim person. It's anybody that comes from these countries that institutes an attack. That's what a terrorist is by the United States. When you think of the word terrorist, when you hear the word terrorist, and it's even people, it's even those of us, that don't necessarily want to think that, but it's what's been pushed in our brains since 9/11, right? That a terrorist has to be somebody affiliated with Al-Qaeda. Of course, Al-Qaeda are terrorists, but the problem is The United States backs and funds and supports these terrorists, like the white helmets in Syria, who have direct ties to Al-Qaeda. And so they can't say that, though. So what they do is they frame any sort of person that is against their military objective or against their foreign policy objective as a terrorist. And so then the media follows along. And you have to be careful because, first of all, this isn't the Israel-Hamas war. This is the Israel-Gaza. This is the Gaza war. You can call it Israel-Palestine, but it's not Hamas, because saying it's only Hamas, again, completely dismisses all of the other resistance factions that are fighting within this whole thing. So the way that they even talk about this in mainstream media is done to make it so that Israel is only fighting Hamas. They're fighting Palestinians. They're fighting and killing civilians. They're not fighting Hamas. They do this so you can dehumanize them and look at them as terrorists. So that's number one part of the language you have to look at as to how this is being described. Number two, if we are to define what is a terrorist, we have to look at the damage that's inflicted on a population. Whenever Israel cries about somebody, right, whether it's Hamas or whether it's whoever is inflicting damage on them, and there's no Hamas in the West Bank, right? Whenever there's some sort of terror attack by some sort of Palestinian militant, they say, oh, it was a terrorist attack. It was a terror attack. It's described like that in the news. What do they say when for months in June, Israel was literally attacking the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They were attacking all of these areas, the refugee camps. They were attacking and imposing on them. They call it an operation. They say, oh, the Israeli operation. And I've caught people doing this. I've had to correct people because it's ingrained in our psyche as to how we refer to people of some sort of Middle Eastern origin when they do something versus how we refer to, let's face it, European Israelis that are there and they are part of a democracy and they somehow have the ability to go and attack and kill 16,000 civilians, Palestinians, including also some of their own under this Hannibal directive. And they are still not deemed terrorists. It is their operation. It is an offensive. It is, Israeli retaliation. But do you ever hear Israel being called terrorist unless it's a Palestinian supporter or somebody that's calling out the right? No, you don't. Why? Ask yourselves why, and ask yourselves and think, am I also doing this? Am I also subconsciously allowing myself to really go in this route? Because that's what really has become apparent to me and really enraging to me, honestly, during this whole, and I hate calling it a conflict, during this whole ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, because a conflict, it is a conflict, but is it a war? If a war would involve two equal sides fighting over some sort of territorial dispute, this isn't about that. This is about removing Palestinians, and they have been very honest about that.
Let's get back to the film real quick. Fam, let's listen to it. This is the one tactic. Like I said, Glenn will point out what the opposition or the opposition to common sense in what he says is trying to do when you have a criticism of the state of Israel. But first, let's look at the tactic that this gentleman has as far as, okay, listen, I want to start condemning everybody. Let's condemn everybody. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to sit there and say, I got to condemn Hamas, then don't you have to condemn the state of Israel? You tell me at home, ladies and gentlemen, what you think. Is that a logical request? You take a listen.
Well, he's sucking and blowing at the same time.
Let me go to the man you've just been. Let me go to Wajahat.
That they are using right
Calm
now.
down,
Let me
Mrs.
go to
Goldstein.
the man you've been accusing. Wajahat, what do you say to that?
Well, first of all, excellent pronunciation of my name, Brooke. Thank you. Also, it's pretty amazing that for a human rights lawyer, you really don't seem to care much about human beings who happen to be Palestinians or Muslim or Arab. It's like a fireman who's actually an arsonist. But thank you.
I risked my life to make a movie about Arab children. I risked my life to make a movie about Arab children and was given an award by the United Nations for my advocacy work for Palestinians.
Fam, she got to make sure she pointed out she risked her life. I don't know how she did.
Yeah.
we should look into it. But if you got to say that several times, probably chances are you didn't risk your life. But let's continue.
Children.
Let him
So
answer.
good job on doing your research.
Let him answer you, please.
You
But
are
he's
the hero and you are the
slandering me.
victim. But let me say the following. Let me say that the person who accused me of being the Muslim Brotherhood and the person who's accused us, anyone who's pro-Palestinian, of being a Nazi, which is, by the way, what Brian Mass said, a Republican. He said there's no such thing as Palestinian civilians because they're just like Nazis, right? But anyway, let me say this, because Piers, I've seen your show. I appreciate
Brooke, can you
that
let Wajah speak,
Do you
please?
condemn the Muslim Brotherhood?
Let me say this. I'm going to go a step forward. Look at this. This is what I'm going to do, because I've seen people with my melanin on Piers' show. I've proactively been asked to condemn Hamas. I condemn Hamas. I condemn Hezbollah. I condemn Islamic Jihad. I condemn Muslim Brotherhood. I condemn chocolate hummus. I condemn anti-Semitism. I condemn Islamophobia. I condemn white supremacy. I also condemn Israel's occupation. I condemn settler violence against Palestinians that have killed over 100 people on the West Bank. I condemn Netanyahu using dehumanizing language that you use, such as calling every Palestinian Amalek. I condemn the heritage minister saying that he wants to drop a nuke on Gaza. I have condemned all of that. Do you, Brooke, join me in condemning everything that I have condemned? Because I think as a human rights lawyer, anyone who cares about humanity, they should condemn everything that I have condemned. Brooke,
100%.
do you condemn?
So why, if you condemn the Muslim Brotherhood, are you publishing with the Center for American Progress, which is strong ties to the Muslim Brotherhood? And why do you allow your papers to be cross-posted on Muslim Brotherhood websites? Why have you denied Jewish indigeneity to Judea?
Okay,
Why
you know what, Brooke?
We're going to get into the rest of that really soon, too, as well. But you can see the tactics she's using, of course, really quickly. Like, she's not going to condemn what the state of Israel is doing. She's not going to condemn what Netanyahu has said. She's not going to condemn what the foreign minister said by calling all Palestinians human animals. She's not going to condemn any of that, you know? But I do like the tactic, fam, and I was wondering what you think about it. When somebody goes, okay, you know what? And I know you will not use this tactic because that you don't believe that's, you know, what this gentleman is believing. And I don't know if he necessarily even believes that too as well. I think he's just using the tactic of, okay, if we're going to say what's good for the goose, we got to say what's good for the gander. If we're going to condemn this side, we got to condemn the other side, because the other side certainly is killing women and children. Maybe they might not be doing it so drastically the way Hamas did on October 7th, which I have said right off the jump, I think they're going to blow that out of proportion. Therefore, they can manufacture consent for more deaths. And as Israel themselves are releasing these numbers, we're seeing that it's not as drastic as it once was portrayed in the very beginning, right? We even see the fact that IDF soldiers were killing a lot of people at that festival. But, fam, when you do this tactic of laying it all across the board and you say, okay, now that we've condemned everything, now we can have an honest conversation about what's going on. Your thoughts on the tactic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel the need to do that, but even if you do that, as has been displayed, like this gentleman did, they still won't do it. They won't condemn anything Israel does because they see Israel as the superior party here. They see as Israel having the right to do whatever they want to do because they're the chosen ones. And that mindset is what allows them to view Palestinians as less than. And it is why no matter if you condemn Hamas as a Palestinian or an Arab person or a person of the Middle Eastern descent, or if you condemn Hamas as anybody, as some sort of advocate against what is being done to people in Gaza, they won't change their mind on this. Because if the death of 16,000 people and many more that haven't even been found and have disappeared under rubble, and the death of many who are injured who aren't getting the adequate care they need, and the continued attacks by Israel now with a vengeance, it doesn't convince you that there's clearly a right and a wrong here, as there are in some conflicts. Then I don't know what will. Again, it doesn't. And Center for American Progress is anything but pro-Palestinian. It is hilarious that she's citing Center for American Progress as part of the Muslim Brotherhood, because
I know, fam,
are bought by AIPAC. They
that will be
the
addressed.
democratic entity.
That will be addressed. That will be addressed.
So,
let's take a look at this, fam, because this gets a little more juicier. Let's finish up on this so we can get to the next topic. Hold on.
I'm going to get it. I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to jump in because we're straying. You keep
come
mentioning.
and you say these things on television,
Brooke,
but you write the exact opposite in your writing.
I'm going to jump in and come to Glenn. He's been waiting very patiently as you guys have been going at it.
Here's Glenn.
In a way, this kind of is reflective of the debate I thought we should be having, because it seems to me that a lot of people are simply not prepared to tolerate other views generally in society. We've got to a place where people get cancelled if they don't toe the line, don't have the opinion that a certain group of people have decided is the only opinion that's allowed. How have we got there? How has it been through this war? I mean, to me, watching Twitter, X as it now is in this war, is like this terrible assault on the brain. It's just people screaming in a self-righteous, often fake news-oriented way, trying to scream their opponents into submission. Where has honest democratic debate gone? What do we do about this?
Yeah, I think you're right that Brooke, your first guest, is a perfect reflection of what has gone so wrong with this discourse ever since October 7th. She did two things that has been really pathological in terms of how we're trying to conduct discourse about a very serious issue. Number one, she equates every person who criticizes Israel or who defends the Palestinian cause of being an Islamic Nazi or somehow being associated with terrorists, as she did with Wajahat, with whom I have a lot of differences, but he has never done anything like that. The idea that the Center for American Progress,
You are doing exactly what
Center
you're accused of doing.
You must let him speak.
Are you able to
Brooke, you had a
listen
chance
to
to
other
speak. I
people?
want to hear from Glenn.
The idea that the Center for American Progress is some sort of crypto terrorist group, when in fact it is the most mainstream Democratic Party platform that hosted Benjamin Netanyahu, that completely supports Israel, just like the Democratic Party does, is derangement. And this attempt to accuse everyone of being a bigot or an anti-Semite the minute they express any criticism of Israel, I think is very toxic. But the worst thing, Piers, is that since a month ago when this started, we have had a spate of censorship throughout the West aimed only at one side, which is the pro-Palestinian side. France banned all pro-Palestinian protests. You can have pro-Israel protests. You can go and say you think Gaza should be flattened, that all Gazans should be eradicated, like many people say. What you can't do, though, is march in opposition to the French policy. The British Home Secretary said waving a Palestinian flag may be a crime. In the U.S., they're banning pro-Palestinian groups. So we can have our differences. Obviously, this is a very inflammatory issue, but what we should not do is try and suppress healthy debate through state censorship, through banning one side from expressing themselves, or accusing everybody of being a terrorist and a Nazi because they express criticism for the Israeli government, something which many Jews like myself and many Israelis do as well.
I'd like to also point out, fam, that there are things that I am very proud of in this country right now when it comes to this situation, and that's a group of Jewish people are really leading the charge, not in my name, not in my religion, not just the rabbis that we see breaking out in these chants or in the streets, whatnot, but, you know, what we saw at the Capitol where, you know, I was watching a video just today of somebody who got arrested there and, you know, was saying, not in my name, not in my religion. We had, you know, I lost my parents in the Holocaust. And what I learned from them, very much what Norman Finkelstein had talked about years ago, is that it's because of what I learned through the Holocaust that we should be expressing remorse for the Palestinian. That means no more for everybody. And what they're doing in our name and our religion is wrong. And they clearly point out that anti-Semitism is not the same as anti-Zionism. And anti-Zionism, what we played from Kwame Ture, that activist in the beginning, is such. It's a geopolitical move. It's about imperialism. It's about expansion. It's not about the religion itself. Go ahead, fam.
Yeah, and I mean, I just also want to, since we're on this topic, I do want to point out that Israel has been lying a lot, and they have been completely and totally exposed. And that's why you have people like Brooke being the way she is, because they're just, you know, they have no defense anymore. They cannot hold on to this idea that people are going to buy what they're saying, that everybody who supports, you know, Palestinians somehow has ties to terrorist groups, which is, it's laughable that she mentioned again the Center for American Progress. It is hilarious, but I want to point out one of the things, since unless you have something to say on this video, this that I found from another one of Israel's lies. It's this tweet I have up because I think
Sure,
it's
go ahead.
important that
Your tweet?
if
I had
Jamie
enough of
can
the
bring it
video.
up.
Not the Thomas Massey one or your tweet. I think Fee has a tweet,
No,
guys.
my tweet.
Yeah, cheese, and I'll take down the video from that's enough from the whatchamacallit video. But you drive the bus from now on because I'm done. So I'll let you handle everything, cheese slice. So go ahead, fam.
Okay, so if you can just scroll up. So the Israeli Zionists online are literally saying that these are a bunch of men that were killed and that were captured. Excuse me, they were captured in Khan Yunis, and it's actually not. These are actually civilians in North Gaza, which is in a different location, and that's according to the journalists that have been covering the Gaza attacks. And these are many that were kidnapped at a UN shelter, while the men, the women and children were sent elsewhere south. The men were kept here and they were kidnapped. And one of these men was actually a journalist that was identified as Dia Al-Khalot, who's the office director of this outlet called the New Arab Outlet in Gaza. And you see in the pictures, I want to show you, if you just scroll on the pictures, how these men are basically stripped naked. And there's another picture. If you click on the original tweet of this man right here, Aviva, yeah. So he's staging it as mass surrender of Hamas terrorists in Khan Yunis. And that's just inaccurate, right? It's inaccurate. They're saying these are all terrorists. They're not wearing the right footwear, as was pointed out by DD Politics. But so again, we are having to debunk these lies from Zionists in real time about the things they're saying that are just completely invalid. And they know this. The establishment knows this. The Israeli Zionists know this, that they're being completely debunked. The laughable videos that they created, right, at the Al-Shifa hospital, where they left guns, they staged guns. Everything was staged in a beautiful, order. And they said, oh, Hamas left all of this. Look, this is proof that they were here and that they have tunnels. And then you have the ex-Israeli prime minister going on CNN and admitting that the Israelis actually built those tunnels and under the hospital.
Yeah.
So you have all of these things that have been happening where it's actually been embarrassing for Israel and what they've been doing. Apart from the fact that they look now as the villains, it's been embarrassing. And so you're going to have this visceral reaction where they're just saying all sorts of things and they're lying, because now what's come out, Pasta, is the alleged witness reports from people that are completely non-credible sources that the women were raped, and that there was, that there are videos of these Hamas terrorists bragging about these rapes. But where are the videos? Where are the videos? Where's the evidence? They never show. They just say it. And so that's the next thing that's being alleged now, that these hostages were returned, that they weren't treated so well. And that's actually not what we've seen from the hostages themselves. So again, I think we're going to be seeing more revelations. I do think that the important thing about this panel is that the wind has shifted. Everything that Israel has said has been debunked. And so even shows like Pierce's show or CNN or BBC or any of these news outlets, even the New York Times, they can't go along with that narrative anymore. They have to sort of distance themselves from it.
I think, fam, though, too, the important part about Glenn Greenwald pointing it out and posting that out is the fact that now people can identify with that and say, when they have one of these discussions and somebody says, no, that's anti-Semitism, like, no, it's not. Well, you're being supportive of pro-Hamas. I mean, there are people out there that would argue, fam, that a terrorist is nothing more than a poor military man in another country, right? There's no standing army.
Yeah.
They have to fight in guerrilla fashion. So a lot of people would argue that. So I think that's something that needs to really be thought about and come into play, and especially with, who's labeling them a terrorist organization. And if you're going to label them a terrorist organization, you should label yourself a terrorist organization, especially with as many children as Israel has killed and whatever happened
NATO.
on October 7th. Yeah, and but in October
And
7th,
the CIA,
right?
and all of these agencies
Yeah.
that
Well,
have
regardless
killed
what
innocent
happened on
people.
that day, this shouldn't be happening whatsoever. It is really terrible. It's awful. And the displacement, I mean, where they just hit now 6 residential buildings the other day in southern Gaza. So it's shifted now south after the ceasefire.
Hamas is under every single building, though. Terrorist groups are under every single building. That is what they're
That's
arguing.
what they said the other day, fam. They said every other house has a a way into the tunnels. So that's like, by saying every other house, that means you can just clear out all of Gaza with no remorse, and that will be your excuse.